tonight that it was just in the school. I thought it was like a little side thing there that we went in. And, but I remember lots from the public school. We had a lot of fun with most of the people, a lot of the people that are here tonight, Nancy and Barb and a lot of the girls and the guys too. So the one that I just wanted to share with you that in the portable, because it's the only thing I had, because I only went there for 6 months and then moved to Peterborough. So we had portable chairs at that time put into this little area. So I happened to be this one day sitting at the very back, and you would all know Joel Maloney was our teacher at that time. And I think the story went that he had a crush on one of the teachers, so he was coming in the side door, and I had pushed all these chairs with my feet because they moved, and I was sitting at the back, moved them. And Joel was still talking to the girl and came in the door backwards, right onto the lap of Neil Wasson. Well, we've laughed about that for years, and Neil didn't know he was coming, so I did the naughty thing by pushing all the chairs up there, but we've had a lot of laugh over that. Neil doesn't really remember it, but I remember. It's one of my vivid memories. And I remember Joe Maloney. I don't think he's no longer with us either, is he? I think he's passed away, hasn't he? And Loretta Hill and Loretta Archer has just passed away, and we had a lot of fun in high school, plus in public school too. As I say, I only went 6 months in high school, so. And still keep in touch with a lot of the girls. Nancy Graham and I just became great-grandparents for the first time, and our granddaughters, I've been best friends for a long time, and it's a small world how the cycle comes back again. And Evelyn Dunford, a lot of our girls are gone, but Arlene Crow and Fred Hockaday, and a lot of those. So that's just some of my memories that I jotted down. So very few, but.
That's good. Thank you very much. The next name I have on this list, he's not here, at least I haven't seen him, is Arnold Graham, who told me that he would like to make some comments. Maybe Arnie forgot, or maybe he's just not feeling well enough to come out. But, so we'll go on to Helene Wasson. Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, I have nothing but good memories. Okay, I have nothing but good memories about my years in at Lakefield and the high school. Mr. Harvey was principal for grade 9, and I think he retired after that. I think by the time I got to grade 10, I think Mr. Fawcett was principal. Mr. Harvey, he was the only teacher I recall having that made me understand and enjoy hearing about Shakespeare and his works. He seemed to be able to bring them to life. But as I say, we only had him for the 1 year. I think he was a disciplinarian, but I think he was a very fair man. And obviously, when I look at at some of the things on the wall over there, he was principal, I guess, for quite a few years. And after him came Mr. Fawcett, and he was there, I think, for a couple of years before Bob Sutton became principal. And Miss Dunn was there for a very long time. And I think she put a lot of us through with a lot of help with French and Latin. I think that she was very generous with her marks. As far as I was concerned, she was anyway. I wasn't that great at either of those. There were only 4 classrooms in the high school side. Grade 9 and 10 were separate rooms, but 11 and 12 were together. And the grade 13 students were in what was the lab as well as their grade 13 classroom. I think the other person I think we should mention is Everett Sloan. I thought he was a great teacher, and he prepared us well for going into grade 9. I have more memories on things such as sports and music than I do academics, unfortunately. We used to really look forward to the boys playing hockey against the different schools. And the Grove, there was a friendly rivalry between the Grove School and the high school boys. So we really, really enjoyed watching both the football and the hockey. And Bessie Dunn, I don't know how many years she had a hockey team, but she had a girls' hockey team that I thoroughly enjoyed. And we went around to the different small municipalities, and like Norwood and Lindsay are two of the ones that I remember. And she was great to take that extra time that it took to cart us around and let us enjoy the hockey. We didn't have any, there was certainly no gym. The gym was the outdoors. But we all seemed to enjoy that in the good weather, the football and the baseball. All those things were, and I remember Mr. Reno, the music teacher, more so in public school I remember, but we had a glee club in high school that we sang at some of the commencements, which used to be held in the town hall, the upstairs of the town hall. And many of us, like when the war started, we were pretty young, but by the time the war was over, we were teenagers. And through those years in high school, cadets were a big thing, and I can't remember I don't know how that got initiated, but there was a lot of effort put into to the cadets, and there were certainly a lot of mainly men, but some women as well, that were in the forces during the war, and unfortunately, there were quite a few lost during the war too. But the cadet corps was a big thing as well. Another thing that I remember is one part of the hall, the downstairs hall in the school, had a piano, and it was quite a large space, and we used to try and he was very generous with his time. Lionel Brown used to play the piano, and we used to like to dance there during our lunch hours, and we had a lot of fun. Also, there was some kind of an arrangement with the school and the YWCA for farmerette camp. And that was mainly because of all the people that were in the services. There was nobody to pick the fruit and vegetables. And I can't remember what your mark had to be. I think Connie Orr and Helen Kelly were the first ones that I remember going to this farmerette camp. And if your marks were at what level, I forget, by the end of April, I think it was, you had to sign up for 13 weeks to go to this farmerette camp. And Dorothy Dickles and I did that, and I think it was mainly because we knew that Helen Kelly and Connie Orr had enjoyed it so much. So the YWCA looked after the boarding of us, and that was enjoyable. I don't know how the school, I don't know how they arranged that, because you graduated your year, but you did have to stay for the 13 weeks. But it was a fun time. I don't think that, those are the main things. Oh, and also Mr. Sutton started a band, and that was fun to listen to and I see there's a picture over there with the fellows who were in that band, and that was fun to listen to them as well. I think it was an enjoyable time, for me anyway, and I think for most of us. We had as I say, there was no gym, but there was never any problem in making fun and having things to do. You're welcome.
In listening to some of this stuff, made me think of a few things which are not relevant, but, well, they are in a way. Of course, I went to the public school, and I remember those stairs going upstairs, and it was always, it was a mystique to me. I mean, what is up there? And you know, as I got grade 7 or something like that, I thought, well, won't be too long, I'll be able to go up there. Then damn that they didn't build a new school, so I never did see what was up there. But I do know Sutton and Mr. Rintoul and those people. When I went to grade 9, I think all of us, we wouldn't bat an eye when Mr. Sutton was in the room. We were just mortified of him, and it was by reputation, not by anything he did. Just don't fool around with him. And I didn't. Okay. The next person on the list, unfortunately, had an accident. She fell and injured herself a fair bit, I guess. Ruth Crawford. So she has her hand or arm in a cast, and I think, who was telling me? Yeah, you said that her face was marked up.
She injured her face, she said
Yeah.
her face is all black and blue, and just not feeling too well right now. She wanted to come, she had all sorts of information for us, but.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Ruth Crawford.
Okay, well, there's a guy here that is here, Barry Wilford. He's here somewhere. Come on up, Barry. You want to hold it or sit?
Yes, I did go to high school here in Lakefield for a while. When I was about 7 years old, my mother received a letter from an uncle of hers and said, if you'd like to see that little brat of yours go to a private school, I'll pay the costs. And so she could hardly wait to get me off to a private school, and so she brought me over one day to see about the Grove School in Lakefield. And she was so impressed with it that she thought that'd be a good place to get rid of me. And I ended up going to the Grove School for 10 years. And so I started in grade 2, and I got to somewhere around grade 3 or 4 in the 10 years. And so I progressed pretty well, and I ended up in high school down here in Lakefield, grades 11, 12, somewhere in there. And I must say it was a wonderful experience. And the principal, I've already heard his name mentioned a few times, and it was Bob Sutton. And Bob Sutton would strike the fear in everybody. Everybody was terrified of Bob Sutton, especially myself, because I was a former Grove School boy, and he hated the Grove School. And anything that represented the Grove School, he didn't have much love for. And that included me. My only salvation was that I had a brother and a sister that preceded me here at the high school, and they were both brains. And so that he got to think that maybe I would turn out something like that too, but he was disappointed to find out that that didn't happen with me. In fact, he took great pride in making me feel as unimportant as he could. And only he could do it. He would watch everyone very carefully, and if he saw that you weren't paying attention, the first thing he'd do, he'd say, now what's your opinion of that, Derry? And I, of course, would stand up and mumble something. And I remember one day he asked in our class, I think we were in grade 13, he asked someone to spell restaurant. And they couldn't do it, and so it went around the whole class, and no one could spell it properly. And so there's one word that I do know how to spell, is restaurant, and that's the way he taught. It was from sheer fear. But I respect him as probably the best teacher I ever had. That he taught our classes, the ones I attended. I was in his physics class, I was in his algebra class, and any class that I went to that he conducted. Chemistry, of course, was his specialty, and I always got good marks in his subjects, and so eventually we became quite friendly. In fact, in later years, I used to run into him at the curling club here in Lakefield and in Lindsay. He was a member in Lindsay. He was from Lindsay, and I was born and raised in Lindsay, so we had starting to have things in common. And we became good friends later in life, and I admired him greatly. But the one story that I have sort of comes around him, it refers to the chemistry lab. And I know that we studied a lot of things, and we had a couple of people in our class, and the one I remember quite well is Jim Sloan was his name, and his dad was the principal of the public school. And Jim liked to torment Mr. Sutton, and I think he would challenge him to a fight like about twice a week. And he had no fear of Mr. Sutton. He was the only one in our class that had no fear of Mr. Sutton. And one day he came in with a great big red apple, and we're having a test. And Jim decided that he wasn't going to participate in this test at all. And so he pulled out the big red apple and he started to slurp this big red apple and bite after bite after bite, and so that Mr. Sutton could hear it. And so when they turned in the sheets of paper that our answers were all on, Jim's didn't even have his name on it, let alone the answers to any of the questions. He just, a few drips from the apple was all that was on his sheet. And he liked to do that to Mr. Sutton. He liked to torment him. He knew that if he got hell, that his dad would bail him out in some way. And he usually did. But he was always in trouble. And one day, 2 or 3 of us got together, and the subject was coming up on gases, the various gases. And this was during the war, and of course there were a lot of gases of various types being used, and so on and so forth. And this one day, Jim came to class, and he had this weather balloon that he bought at the Norwood Fair for $2 or something, and he thought it would be fun to fill this balloon with one of these gases that we were studying. We thought maybe helium, but that was too difficult, so there was another gas that I was trying to remember the name of it, and I'm not sure. I think it was ferrous oxide or something like that. And he decided he would manufacture this gas to fill his balloon. And so it was a day that Mr. Sutton was away at a board meeting or something. And so Jim, the chemistry lab was on the ground floor. And so he went around and he opened one of the windows, one of the great big windows that opened up, and he pulled out his balloon and he started filling it with gas. And as I say, I've forgotten exactly, I think ferrous oxide, or it seems to be something like that. And the balloon filled up very, very nicely, and he was holding it out the window in his right hand, had the neck of the balloon, and he kept putting more and more gas in it, and it just about lifted him right out the window. but not quite. And in fact, he had to let go of the balloon before he was really ready to, and up it went, straight up. And there was a big bang. And then glass started falling on the ground all around the outside. And it blew the window out of the second floor classroom. And everybody was racing around trying to find Mr. Watson, who was the janitor, to clean up this glass. And he came up and looked at it and he said, "What happened here?" And of course, nobody knew. It must have been lightning or something. And so he said, it looks kind of suspicious. Have somebody been fooling around here? And of course no. Well, he said, I'm not going to clean it up. You guys can go and clean it up yourselves if you want. And if you better get it done before Mr. Sutton shows up, or I'm going to tell him what happened. Yeah, but you don't know what happened, do you? Well, somebody eventually admitted what had happened, and so there was a lot of trouble brewing in the lab. And then one day he was showing us the miracle of, I think it was sodium, that he dropped on water, and it would go around like a motorboat and lickety-split around this little pot of water, and which was sort of a miracle and astounded all of us. And then he was away again one day, and somebody thought, let's get a piece of that sodium or whatever it was out and play with it. So we did, and somebody had it in their hand. I think it was John Harding, and he put it on top of a rubber eraser, and it ate its way right through the eraser and landed on his hand. And as soon as it did, of course, he shook it like this, and this sodium, or whatever it was, went flying everywhere. And I can remember one of the, Murray Batten, I think it was, it landed right on his trousers, and he stood up and ripped his trousers off, and everybody else went screaming around and combing their hair, trying to get this stuff out of their hair. The girls were all in trouble. Everything was screaming and yelling. Oh my God, it was chaos. And but we did eventually recover from that episode too, but not without a few harsh words being said from you know who. So we eventually got through high school, and we got to grade 13, and those were great days. I had an old car that my mother had sent to the wrecker, and I resurrected it and filed down the various parts of the engine and put it back together, and we had it running, and it was a Model A Ford, 31 Model A Ford Roadster. And we got the doors welded shut, and we cut them down like a sports car, and we had a Lincoln horns on it, and we had a lot of fun with that, I'll tell you. Donna Edwards, you're not here, Donna? No, I don't see Donna. She said she was going to come and tell about her trips to that I used to pick her up about every second day and take her to the school in my Model A, which we called Myrtle. Some of you might remember it. It used to be a frequent visitor at the drive-in movie down the highway, and we had a wonderful time in those days. We looking at these pictures over here, it certainly brings back a lot of fond memories, and if you haven't looked at them, you certainly should. Back in the 40s were the days of fun and carefree living. We were all in love, of course, at the time, and the girls were all in love with the boys, and vice versa, and anything else that was going went, and we had a wonderful carefree life. There were some things I was going to talk about, but then I can't remember them, so, and my hearing's going too. In fact, tomorrow I have an appointment to get a hearing aid fitted on my ears. So So everything is all falling to hell. And it does happen. And also my eyesight, my glasses are getting thicker, and maybe some of you experienced some of these ailing problems, but if you haven't, I can assure you that since I'm 84, so that if you're approaching that, you're headed to all this fun too. And thank God we're through school. But we had a wonderful time at school, and it's nice to be able to see the memories of the 40s. And thank you for having the time and the patience to listen to some of my stories. I have a few more, and if I think of them, maybe in 20 years, you might hear some more. I had some wonderful times when I was very, very young. I mentioned Bob Sutton's love of the rural school and the love of smart people. And my brother Peter was a bit of a genius. He used to be able to answer any question in grade 13. He could answer any question, and he could figure it in his head within 3 minutes. And sometimes he would take a whole board across the front and across the side to write this problem on the board. And then he wouldn't ask my brother anymore because my brother could answer it in a minute. And so they used to call it the Wilford jump. I don't know whether any of you experienced the Wilford jump, but I know that was his response to a lot of questions about such and such a problem that came up. He would say, well, I hate to tell you this, but it's the Wilford jump. You go from there to there, and it's just a jump. It's a Wilford jump. So when I got to grade 13, he wouldn't ask me any questions either because he was afraid that I would use the Wilford jump, but I never reached those heights. But my brother Peter went on to great things. He went to Queen's University, and he was there for 3 or 4 years, and every year he was there, he won the gold medal for mathematics at Queen's. And he was highly regarded, and he eventually ended up working for A.V. Rowe when they built the Arrow. And so he did pretty well. And he's still with us. He lives up in, Margie, where is it? Up north somewhere. Sudbury?
Sudbury, yeah.
We need to move on.
We need to move on. I'm rambling. And so thanks for your time, folks, and I hope you have some speakers coming up.
Next on my list is Barbara Hill.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Barbara Bill, and I'm the daughter of George and Mary Graham. If you remember the Grahams, I was a Graham one day. Yeah. I remember the first day of high school. I really can't recall a lot of it, but anyways, I do remember some things. Do you remember your teachers' names? Anyone had a favorite type teacher? Was there anyone that had a favorite teacher? Nobody liked the teachers. Oh, I'm sure. I don't remember him. Huh. I have some names written down here of our teachers. There was Miss Belfour, Mr. Shepherd, Mr. Sisson, Mr. Maloney, Miss Stabler, and our principal, Mr. Sutton. We would assemble in the hall before class. And, you know, I can't remember what we did. Did we sing, or was there announcements? Does anybody remember?
Yes.
What?
We had the prayer.
Pardon?
The anthem and the prayer.
We did. An anthem and a prayer. Well, I'm glad somebody remembers. I remember doing a lot of marching. Does anyone remember doing a lot of marching? Oh, boy.
Cadets.
We had uniforms.
Cadets.
Well, I remember the marching. I don't know what I was, a cadet? Oh.
Probably.
Well, we had, the girls wore black skirts and white tops with LHS on them. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
I think there's pictures over here of them. We had a crest, and on the crest, it was "Work Conquers All." That must have took the place of having, I made a mistake here, because I wrote it down and I went, past. Anyways, when we were marching, I really think because we didn't have a gym, that was where we had our exercise, there marching. John Pugh tells me that the boys wore army uniforms. I can't remember that, but I guess they did. Do you remember those? Do you? I don't remember them. Of course, I wasn't a boy. And I remember they had girls hockey and boys hockey, and did they call it rugby or football then?
Football.
And the rink was a great place for those who played hockey and skated, and I know there was a lot of games between previous or other schools. John reminded me of the boys' bugle band. Mr. Sutton formed a band. As I remember, it carried on after they finished school. Is that right?
Yeah.
Are there any members of that band here? Don't see anyone. There was no school buses at that time. A lot of out-of-town pupils boarded. In 1946, the kids from Absley, Lakehurst, and Nefta did get a bus. We had teen town dances at the town hall, the girls sitting on one side and the boys on the other. We did get together once in a while. Commencement and the dance was held in the town hall. We had to get all dressed up for that. It was the ending of an era and the beginning of another. We all took off into different directions. I, in 1950, threw into nursing with Melda Pavey, who married Jim Sloan. I don't know how she handled him, but I did.
Still married to him.
Well, I could tell you a few stories, but I won't. Doris Barcroft. So there was three of us, and we all went in training together into the same class. I feel so privileged to have been able to grow up in our small village. At the time, we knew most people by name. I have so many memories of our high school and hope more people will share theirs with us, as I feel privileged to share some of mine with you. Thank you. Those were the best days of our lives.
And the last name I have on this list is Mary Dipchuk.
You missed one. Anna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, come on up there. I missed one. I even put a check mark on it when I said Mary. I told you the age and infirmities.
My name now is Mary Duchuk, but I was originally Mary Spencer, and I lived out in Smith. And when I started school, I had to come in here to go to public school because I had too far to walk out there. My mother was afraid somebody would kidnap me or something would happen to me, so she sent me in here to my grandmother and my aunt. And I wasn't too pleased with that because I wanted to stay home on the farm with my dad and with my dog and my pet lamb and whatever else I had out there. But when I got here, it was a good thing I did come because my aunt was the one that taught me more than anybody else I've ever had teach me. When I came here, she first of all used to go to the library and get library books. And she'd read them to me. And then she'd get me to read something once I learned to read a little bit. And she'd also take me for a walk every night around the village to different places. And she'd show me who lived here and what they did and how long they'd been here and things like that. She gave me the history of the village, really. So that was in the public school. Well, I still wasn't happy being away from home, so when I was in going into grade 6, I guess, I ended up going back home, going to number 7 Smith, walking 3 miles a day in the morning, 3 miles at night. Little country school with 10 grades, but I don't think there was more than 25 pupils in it. Anyway, I enjoyed that little school though, because that's when I got back into books. My mother, for some reason, didn't like the idea of me reading. Her excuse was, you're going to ruin your eyes. If I was reading in the daytime, well, you should be doing some work. If you're reading at night, you'll ruin your eyes. So it was always a battle. And so I used to read on the way home. This was coming home from public school. And I got fascinated with the grade 8 books. The poem, the combat, things like that. This came alive for me. So when again, I thought everybody isn't into this, so when I went to high school then, I thought, well, maybe I better ease up on the reading a bit, maybe people aren't interested. So one day when I finished my work, I was in grade 9, and I got a book out, and Mr. Harvey was principal. And he was about 7 feet tall, he looked about 10 feet tall, and he'd come along and he says to me, "What are you reading?" And I jumped up out of my seat and I said, "Lorna Doone, sir." And he said, "And what's it about?" And I thought, oh my Lord. So I told him what it was about. And he said, "Good." He said, "You keep on reading." And I thought, oh dear, where did this fella come from? Everybody else is telling me not to read. And he said, "No, you keep on reading. That's the best thing you can do. Best way you can learn." Good. So that was my first experience with Mr. Harvey, and I found out from then on, I found him to be a very, very fine man. I was going to school here during wartime, and of course, a lot of the students, boys particularly, who had been students here, ended up going into the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, whatever. And Mr. Harvey always knew where they were. He kept in touch, and he always knew. We'd have morning assemblies, Friday morning, I guess it was, or whatever, maybe. And if he came out and his hands were shaking, you knew another one of his boys had gone down. They'd gone down in a plane, or they'd been captured, or they'd been killed. He was very, very attached to his students. And I think he gave us a lot of incentive to the path that we should travel. There's been a lot of successful people come out of Lakefield High School, and I think a lot of this is attributed to Mr. Harvey and to his staff. I enjoyed my time here once I got that I wasn't afraid to read. And I've managed to do all right. And I think everybody has done probably better than they normally would have because of their time at the high school. we were going through a very hard time here. It was wartime. We just come through a depression when people lost their jobs. So there wasn't a lot to look forward to, but he gave us something to look forward to. Gave us something to hang on to. And the idea of do your best. And I think that's what I remember most about him. And after the war, a lot of the former students, Arnold Graham is one, he's not here tonight, but he came home. Again, came home from the Army, Air Force, whatever he was in, and no jobs. So he started a shoe repair shop. I don't know how he learned to repair shoes, but that's what he did. What's his name? The fellow that had the frosted food place. He was a butcher, Harold Hamlin. And then all of a sudden, when frosted food came out, he latched onto that, and then Hamlin's ice cream. I think we got a lot of incentive from our teachers, particularly Mr. Arnold. Thank you.
Thank you.
We say,
We saved the best to the last. And usher, please. She's not here? Oh, you're here? Well, you just did. Okay. See, I was right. Now, reading some words here that a fine lady put down. I'm sure everyone had a favorite teacher or can remember a class clown or interesting event. So for those of you that have not been called on this list, the mic is open for anyone that would like to say a few words or talk about a funny thing that happened or whatever. I'll come around with the mic, I think.
I'll stand up, that's all right?
oh, sure, absolutely.
If I stand up, I won't be here as long.
I'll stand up with you.
I don't know whether everyone knows me or not, but my name's Dean Watson. If you know Neil, I'm just his little brother. I went through Lakefield High School for 3.5 years. I never did graduate, so I don't know whether I'm entitled to talk or not.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. All the stories that were told here this evening, I think they're certainly true. But what I really wanted to talk about is when I went into high school, about grade 9, through grade 9 and 10, we had a group of teachers and a principal, and as I remember it, the students sort of took over the school. And as a result of that, the school board figured they needed to hire a disciplinarian as principal. So they searched around and they got Robert E. Sutton to come down. I think he taught at Lindsay at the time, I'm not sure. But I remember the first day he walked into our classroom and he looked around and he found the biggest and strongest boy in the room, and he pointed at him like this and he says, "I don't like you." So we figured that we better find out what he was all about before we acted up too much. And through time, he won us all over and had control of the school again, and we went on to pursue our academic interest rather than having lots of fun in the classrooms. In terms of things that I remember about high school, certainly the sports and athletics and the Army cadets are the three principal things that I remember. The Army cadets for the boys of the school were certainly a discipline in themselves in that we were provided with uniforms which you had to maintain on your own. I remember staying up late at night pressing the pants of my uniform for the drill inspection next day. We also had target practice out at the quarry where we all marched out with our 22 rifles, and I don't know where they kept the ammunition, but we had live ammunition out there that we shot at targets. Now, I had a problem with eyesight, and I don't think I ever did hit the target. But as long as you pulled the trigger, I think they gave us an A+. The other thing that we learned through the Army cadets was a course in Morse code, both beginners and advanced. And they had people from the Army Reserve people come out and teach us this course. And the great thing wasn't the course itself, was the fact that if you passed the course, you got $5. And that was a lot of money in those days. Now, other than those two things, the other thing that was very important to all the boys in high school, and I think a lot of the girls, was the sports that we played. And I couldn't go remiss without mentioning the girls' hockey team, which Helena Giraldi and Dorothy Nichols were on at the time. I was just a little wee guy then. I used to go down to the arena and watch all their games. And they certainly were entertaining and were very good athletes. In fact, there were many boys who probably couldn't play the game as well as they played. But in the boys' realm, we had a boys' hockey team, which we went around to different schools and played hockey against different high schools. And many a Saturday, we got a game with the Grove School. The Grove School never liked to lose a game, so we tell them, well, we're not very good. We should play your third place team. Or like they had first team, for second team, and third team. So we'd play the first team. At the end of the first period, we'd be winning. In the second period, we were playing the second team. And we were fortunate enough to beat that period that we had the first team for the final period of the game, but we never did beat them, I don't think, because they kept shifting opponents that we had to play against. We also used to play soccer against them. We didn't have an idea what soccer was, but we didn't even know the game. But they had all the finesse and all the plays that a soccer team would have, and we got trounced roundly by them. But we had a good run at it. In fact, we could probably run faster than they could, but they knew how to beat us. And we also played football, and there's a lot of fellows that I remember from high school that were on the football team. But the major event there was, we had a math teacher that came from PCBS. There was a rumor that PCBS didn't want him to teach there anymore, but whether that was true or not, I don't know. But he took it upon himself to coach our football team. And whether he knew anything about football or not, I don't know. We certainly didn't. But we did have some pretty big, strong people who liked to play the game. So we got that year, the PCBS junior team had never lost a game through the whole season. So we arranged to have a game on our home field with the PCBS team. Needless to say, we beat them. And the strategy that we used was that we never kicked on third down. We had first cavalry in the line. I played quarterback. From third down, didn't matter how many yards we needed. There was always a quarterback sneak behind first cavalry. And so that goes down in history, but probably not in the history book. These are some of the fun things that we had as we went to high school. There's been a lot of talk about Mr. Sutton. Actually, I always found that if you went to all your classes, you behaved yourself, he didn't bother you. So I really don't have anything but good to say about him. In fact, years after I left high school, we used to come to some of our hockey games around the area and reminisce about old times, about how good it was that he was there when we attended high school. Now there's one other highlight of my teenage years, and that was Teen Town. How many here went to Teen Town? Now Teen Town was started by the Lions Club, as you may or may not know. And the one person I remember who was the principal person that founded it was Stan Richardson, Ann Richardson's father. And they got a bunch of teenagers together. They had a mayor of Teen Town and 2 or 3 councillors. I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be the mayor of Teen Town for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Now, I couldn't dance, so that was okay. My job was just to make sure the turntable was turning. But the highlights of the Teen Town years was that Gene Giraldi and Tom Kurtz could jitterbug. And we used to crank the music up fastest speech we could get. And they would entertain us 2 or 3 times a night by jitterbugging. Yes,
Where was
Elaine.
Teen Town held?
Pardon?
Where was it held?
Teen Town was held in Town Hall up in the, yeah. And the main chore, other than seeing that the turntable was turning and the record was being changed, was to make sure there was a lunch there at the end of the evening. So we who were hungry went for the lunch. A lot of people went to dance.
I have to apologize to Dean for not recognizing him. I'm Ted Webster's son.
Yes.
And the reason I didn't recognize him, because I know Neil, and I know Royden, and I know Red. He's not the same profile at all.
Nobody knows me. That's all I can say.
Yeah, now, one other point, which I guess you all know, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Dean was a catcher on a really good baseball team. He caught Ray Judd.
No, I gotta correct that one.
No, did you not?
I get credit for that all the time, and normally I don't say anything. It actually was my brother Cameron that
Oh,
caught it.
Cameron is a catcher.
The
Sorry.
big problem is that he and I looked so much alike, they didn't know who was behind the thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story about that. I went to a hockey game as a spectator, and Cameron's 2 older girls were at the hockey game too, and I was at one side of the rink, and they were at the other side of the rink. They went home and berated their dad. Why didn't you tell us you were going to the hockey game? He said, I never went to the hockey game. Yes, you did. You were standing on the other side of the rink. He said, oh no, it was probably Dean. Well, there you go.
Thank you.
I do like.
Having mentioned the Watsons, I would tell you that Neil is not here because he had a prior engagement which he could not leave. And of interest, Red, or Don Wasson, had a hip replacement a week and a half or so ago. And I guess he's at home doing well, is he, Dean?
He's in the hospital recovering.
Is he?
It'll be a couple of weeks before he walks.
Is he in Peterborough?
Yeah, PRH.
Geez, I phoned up, I think his surgery was on a Tuesday. I phoned up on a Thursday and they said they didn't have anybody in there that week.
Let me tell you why, because I had the same thing happen, because he's in there under William Donald.
Oh,
William, I didn't even know
That's-
William was in his name.
that's
So
pretty
what-
cool.
Well, they did,
I know he's there because I saw him yesterday.
I'll have to try to get up to see him. Anyway, okay, anyone else?
Can I tell just one little story? And
You already told one.
Oh, I know, this is before high school.
That's okay, you go
We
ahead.
had the baseball field out by the old school, and my sister wanted to play baseball this day, so I said, okay, and my mom and dad said, well, you better chaperone her, and I said, okay, because she's 2 years younger than me. Well, anyway, I let her be, and I forget, I think it was Jeanette Staples was pitching, and, or whether it was Ruth Bullock, I don't know, but the story, I should have phoned her in Winnipeg, she lives in Winnipeg, before I came. But anyway, my sister was knocked out cold with the bat, the ball hit her on the head. Years later, when my sister was with her husband in the Air Force, in, I believe it was in well, somewhere in Europe. She met Ruth Bullock, and her husband, or one of them, was in the forces at the same time as her husband was. She could not believe it, and she said, I still have the lump on my head, but not her. in the playground out here at the school.
Yes, Joanne, do you want this?
Nope.
Don't need it.
I wonder how many of these girls remember the day that we clapped them out to go over to the new high school.
Not very many, but it looks good.
We had all graduated.
The public school, we all come out and stood in front of your half of the high school, and we clapped you out when you were taking your books and walking over to the new school. The first day back after the new year.
From the old school, right? These were all the old school, they didn't.
I imagine it would be in, when the new school?
53, I think, wasn't it?
53, okay.
Wasn't it?
I was thinking it was 54, but okay. But public school all come out and we lined up and they had their books and that and walked over to the new school and we clapped them out.
I'll take your word for it, I don't remember it either.
Barb remembers it.
Barb remembers it. Mark remembers?
Yeah, that was quite a day. And it was colder in Blue Blazes, but they had to walk over with their stuff.
Yeah. Is anyone else? Okay, I have a few thank yous here. When you get up where Dean is heading now, there's a lot of cookies and coffee and that over there. Those cookies were provided by Eleanor Bart, my partner, Diane Carl, sitting there, my sister, Esther Doré, Nancy Haynes, and Margaret Wilford. Now, if someone else has made cookies, I'm not aware of it. I also like to thank Karen Graham for making sure the coffee and all that stuff is laid out back there. She's done a great job as always. So now I'd like the motion to adjourn. Any member? Terry? The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you. Look at the pictures. Enjoy the cookies. Have a coffee.